Vandy opens the season as 13.5-point underdogs in the opener versus Virginia Tech. You should take it.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we're going to discuss how special teams can and actually needs to be elite in 2024. How can strength and conditioning set the culture for the program? But first, early lines for week one have been released, and Vandy is currently 13.5-point underdogs versus Virginia Tech, and you should really jump on that. Now, I know it's easy to say, these are the easy things to say. Vandy was 2-10, right? They suck, okay? Yeah, Vandy's always sucked. They're 2-10 last year. They don't have anybody coming back. They lost a bunch in the portal. Virginia Tech is ranked. They got a lot of people coming back, etc., etc., etc. All those things you could probably say, and nobody would dispute you, right? Those are facts. Vandy was 2-10 last year. Virginia Tech does have a lot of people coming back, right? But there's also a lot of things that are in Vandy's favor, too, to cover the 13.5 points and even win the game. So look at what Vandy's done since wrapping up a 2-10 season, okay? So both coordinators let go. Clark Lee decides he wants to take over the defense, which was a brilliant move. I think there's a lot more focus there. He's made overhauls in the offense and defensive philosophies. Hired Tim Beck as his offensive coordinator. Hired Jerry Kill as a chief consultant to the head coach, which is basically he's essentially in charge of the offense. He's basically a second head coach for Clark Lee, allowing Clark Lee to really kind of hyper focus on the defense this year. And you have an extra set of head coach eyes, a guy that's been successful. Okay. All right. They overhauled strength and conditioning, which I'm going to talk about exactly what that looks like, but that's been going well. I think you're seeing a lot of guys that have, I think there's a renewed energy. It looks like guys are bigger, stronger, faster, more competitive. There's a more competitive spirit within this program, something that I think has been lacking. You can just kind of tell. There's no real way of knowing without being inside. But when you watch these clips and you watch how things are shaking out, you can kind of tell that there's a competitive spirit a little bit, and that's a good thing. Guys are competing, guys are talking, but there's also a camaraderie to it. It's friendly competition. These guys respect each other, and they're pushing each other, and they're trying to get each other ready for the rigors of an SEC schedule. That's a positive thing, right? So that's another factor. Okay, they've done extremely well in the transfer portal. If you go back and listen to my episode on the transfer portal grades, I'm not going to go through every transfer, but they've got a lot of great key pieces and filled a lot of positions of need, and got some guys that can help fit this big puzzle on offense, this big puzzle on defense, and even the big puzzle on special teams. They've got pieces now to fit in that puzzle, to complete that puzzle. Not saying they're going to go undefeated, because let's be honest, going from 2-10 to 12-0 is quite the turnaround. I don't think that's going to happen by any stretch. There's some teams that are just deeper than what Vandy is, but 13.5-point underdogs is right now. I don't think Virginia Tech can cover that. Not this year. Not with what I've noticed that Vandy's been doing. Philosophy wise, they've changed a lot. They've got playmakers. They've got different guys that can hurt you in different ways. They filled offensive line spots, even though they need more. I think they've got enough to sustain this year, but they need to keep building at that spot. They've got really good defensive linemen out of the transfer portal. Corday Sidnor and Zaylen Wood are going to wreak a lot of havoc. Langston Patterson from yesterday's episode, I think, is going to be the leader of that defensive front and ultimately one of the co-leaders of that defense, one of the co-captains. He's going to make a big difference over there. CJ Taylor, whether he plays safety, linebacker, he's kind of a hybrid guy. He's somebody that can kind of fit in just about anywhere. He's gonna be kind of all over the place. Brandon Fontenette, somebody that came over from TCU in the portal, I think he's going to make a big difference. These corners are going to be outstanding. Like, the defense is loaded for bear. I mean, there's a lot of attitude over there too, and they flat get after it. They're competitive. They got guys that talk. They got guys that they're not going to back down. There's been Vandy teams in the past, and Vandy fans, you know this just as well as anybody. So I'm not saying anything that you don't already know. But there's been teams that have just straight folded in the past. I don't think that's going to happen with this team. There was an episode on SEC Network. It was like an all-access look at Vandy spring practice, and that was incredible to watch. Like, usually it's a lot of just like fluff pieces and shots from practice, and the head coach talking and being mic'd up and saying things that he feels like he needs to say because of the camera. But I mean, you look at the clips, they're showing some pretty candid stuff with this episode. They're showing some pretty telling things with these practice clips and some of these competition clips where they're getting after each other a little bit. They're competing. There's guys that are saying, "Hey, I need this. I want to go get this," and "Hey, let's go grab that." And they don't even have their quarterback one in camp yet. Like, they're doing all of this without their starting quarterback in camp because he's not here yet. He started. He starts now. Diego Pavia wearing number 2. He's excited about that. Nate Johnson wearing number 8. He wore 17 in spring, but he's wearing number 8 for the season. I know he's probably excited about that. There's a whole range of things. A whole slew of things that when you evaluate this program and you're really kind of looking at this betting line, if you overanalyze it like I'm doing right now, you have to ask yourself, now, why would I take Vandy plus 13.5? Why would I do that? The reasons I listed earlier are super easy reasons to take Virginia Tech, but I think Virginia Tech is a formidable. I think they're a good team. They're obviously ranked for a reason. They return a lot of people, but like, there's been an awakening at Vandy, and Clark, the players notice it. Some of the veteran players are like, I've never seen this Clark Lee before. Like, they're pretty, like, there's some stuff that they're not sugarcoating it, right? Jerry Kill came on there and was like, not to disrespect anybody, but like, it wasn't like this. And there's a lot more attention to detail. You're going to see a lot different of a team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, since Clark Lee's kind of taken over that side of the ball. And so it should give you every reason of confidence to say, okay, well, if Vandy can't win this game, they're at least going to cover the 13.5. They're going to make it close, keep it tight. The game's at Vandy. There's new construction. There's going to be parts of it that are finished, which gives fans excitement. Seeing some of the clips on the construction cam and some of the photos and images that they've released, like, it's coming together pretty nicely. The north end zone is supposed to be ready for seating this coming season, 2024, and the south end zone should be ready for completion in 2025. So there's that. And Vandy United and everything, that getting people excited for those seats, to get some premium seating, to get some fun things going on in the stadium. And they're finally, I think, going to see a product out there that is going to be legit. Offensively, you're going to see a unique identity. You're going to see Quincy Skinner, who after seeing that episode of SEC All Access, I am even more fired up about Quincy Skinner. I doubled down on what I said on yesterday's episode about how he's going to be a difference maker. I mean, that guy is full of competitive spirit. He wants to get after it. He wants to dominate. He wants to take a slant to the house. He's going to make catches in traffic. He's going to go after you. He's going to let you know about it. He is going to be mentally, physically tough. He might even be the emotional leader of the offense now. I'm gonna double down and say that he's going to. I really like him as a breakout candidate because of that episode and what he's saying, the confidence that he brings, all the good stuff. And I know you got to do it on the field. You got to prove it on the field, and we'll see if Vandy can prove it on the field. I know my comment section is gonna be full of that. I know it. I absolutely know it. It's fine. You're gonna get some Tennessee fans on there saying, "Well, it's still candy," whatever. They got to prove it still. But as of right now, from what I've seen since the end of the season, when you had 2-10 in the books to now, all the things that they've done to improve this team and overhaul this roster and this program has been nothing short of amazing. What they've been able to do while your head coach is on the hot seat and not knowing if he's going to be back next season, right? Everybody's saying Clark Lee is going to be first to fire, which is a convenient thing to say because Vandy's 2-10, last in the SEC, all that jazz. But something different. There's a different feel on West End. That's the simple part. That's the simple way of saying it. There's a different feel on West End. There's a different energy. There's a different focus. And it's good. And you should be excited. I can tell that a lot of people are excited. The North, both expansion projects, they put tickets on sale. They've sold out. The North End Zone, I know for sure, the field level suites. I think everything that they've sold or put available is sold out. So there's somebody's excited. It might be some businesses. I don't know. Somebody's excited. There's a lot of people that are excited based on that. And based on a lot of other things, but there's a lot of positive momentum going around this program, and you can feel it. There's a great energy, positive energy, and a lot of that was set forth with strength and conditioning. How can that change? How can that set the culture? I don't know. We're going to answer that here next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL playoffs, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, parlays, futures, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. And if you want a really good line to bet on, take Vandy on the over at 2.5 wins and take Vandy plus 13.5 against Virginia Tech. Those are two lines you should really hammer on FanDuel.com. So visit FanDuel.com to look at those odds and more. And FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook. All right, are you watching ESPN or Fox Sports? Are you tired of all the shouting? Like, so tired you have to almost press mute on your TV just so you don't have to hear all that screaming? Well, here's the good news. You should make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On podcast, your team every day. So thank you. Speaking of every day, thank you. Shout out to the everydayers. I'm this close to 300. I could get there by the end of this week. Be a friend, tell a friend, spread the news. Hey, for the most part, it's going to be all football from here on out. We'll sprinkle in a little bit of baseball as they stay alive. As regionals are right around the corner, take on Coastal Carolina on Friday. We'll preview that game later on this week, and preview their road to the Super Regionals. But thank you to the everydayers. And thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. So how can strength and conditioning set the culture? Everyone always says that, right? You're probably wondering, well, how does that happen? Because it's just, you're just in the weight room. You're just lifting weights. You're just getting in shape. How does that set the culture? Well, first of all, the strength and conditioning staff led by Robert Steiner, Coach Robbie Steiner, and his staff, they see the players more than the coaches do, more than the on-field coaches do, right? That's who you are with the longest in your college career. The strength staff, they train you. You have a team of dietitians that help you fuel your body right. You get and eat the right things. You have all of that, okay? So you have them getting you ready physically, okay? But what does that do for culture? Well, it builds camaraderie, or as Tommy Maddox said, Bubby Brister said with the 1997 Broncos, it builds camaraderie-ship. But it does. It builds a sense of community. You're getting after it. There, some of the things they do with strength and conditioning, they build that physical and mental toughness that gives you confidence throughout the season. It builds you up to keep you healthy. They have a good program for you to strengthen the areas around your joints to keep your joints protected, strengthen your neck so that you don't get so that you're not as sustainable to concussions. A lot of things they do to protect you, to give you confidence, to allow you to go out and just play the game at the highest level you can play. Now, with the confidence that all that stuff brings, you hit personal gains in the weight room, and you hit personal gains out in speed, agility, things like that. But the biggest thing is like everybody's together. Everybody's celebrating each other. Everybody's accomplishing things, right? There's no one-on-ones. You're not battling for spots necessarily. I mean, you kind of are. Everything's an audition, but that's not really the point of it. And this is the time, this is the setting for guys to be able to root for each other. Like, hey, I don't really know you, but you're about to hit your personal best on power clean, and I'm gonna be right there cheering you on. All right, you get to know each other. You really kind of get to see, okay, things are going to get pretty crappy, especially in like January, February, like right before spring practice, like that stretch of time when strength coaches are trying to. It's almost like they're trying to kill you. Honestly, I know that sounds a little hyperbolic, but like the things you do during January and February are like you're sitting there going, okay, I'm going to be ready for Navy SEALs when I get done with this, right? But it gives you a sense of accomplishment, and you can look over to your right, you can look over to your left, and say, okay, we accomplished this, right? You see your buddy, he's out there struggling, but he's getting after it, man. And he fights through it. You accomplish the mission. And hey, he's got my back. And he knows that you have his back, right? That's where the trust is built, right? Because they know you're getting after it just the same way. Now, if you were to skip those workouts, if you were to miss out on that stuff, that doesn't happen, right? But like you're just flat out going, man. And competition, you're building a competitive spirit. Like you're going against guys like one-on-one tug of war with like ropes or tires or everything else. You have like sled races, you have teams, you have things that you do that get you in agility, shape, and conditioning that you don't even realize you're doing because you're competing, right? There's races, there's tug of wars, there's battles, there's all kind of things that you do against each other that allow you to build that competitive spirit, that allow you to say, okay, we're going to put you in the toughest of conditions. We're going to put you in the fishbowl. We're going to put you out in front of everybody, and we're going to try to expose you. We're going to see what you're made of. You got one-on-one. There's no hiding. We're going to see what you're made of. Are you going to win? Are you going to lose? Are you going to fight? Or are you going to lay down? That's the questions they're going to answer. And that's the questions that are going to be answered for everybody watching, everybody rooting you on. Everybody's rooting each other on. Like you want that guy to win, or you want both guys to win. It doesn't matter who wins. It's all about the fight. It's all about the competitive toughness. And there's going to be reps won. There's going to be reps lost. That's not the point. The point is, are you going to fight? When it comes time to fight, are you going to fight? And that just builds a sense of community. Like that's what sets the culture. That's what ties in everything that these coaches are trying to preach. It comes from Clark Lee down through Coach Steiner and delivered through the conduit of strength and conditioning. Then it comes back into the message comes back to Clark Lee, and he delivers it himself, and then delivers it through his assistant coaches, through the dietitian. Eventually, when you know you've got it, the professors on campus also buy into that culture, and they just feed into everything and cultivating this thing we call football, because it makes the culture of being a Vanderbilt Commodore that much better. It gives you a sense of pride in your university. And that's the same for any other university out there. Like, it happens all over every campus. Like, that's how you build the culture. That's how you sweep the culture through the university to the fans, to the community. Like, Stanford, like all throughout the campus, all throughout Palo Alto, all throughout whatever. Notre Dame, Georgia, Alabama, Florida State, Miami, everywhere you go, the goal is to start with the head coach and funnel it out from there. You funnel it through strength and conditioning. You get the message across. You reinforce it with your coaches. You reinforce it with your sports staff. You reinforce it with the athletic department, sports supporting other sports, right? Then in the university, and then once the administration, and then the fans, then the supporters, then the local businesses around, then the city, and then so on and so forth, right? And then you get this big wide net of support, and it's all really just the foundation, the seeds is planted through strength and conditioning, because it builds that sense of community, which starts with this little group and then grows. And that's how it happens. And that's how it builds. That's how momentum builds, right? Right now, Vandy's in the very small stage, right? Strength and conditioning, spring practice. It's going to be reinforced again through strength and conditioning, and then reinforced yet again through fall camp. And then once the season goes, you're going to see the fruits of your labor. You're going to harvest and see how that worked. And if it worked, come back and do it again. You go through that cycle again, right? And you just keep building. Or you find somebody that can build and go from there. So that is how you build culture. And also, another culture builder that'll help reinforce it is special teams. That's the forgotten phase of football. It needs to be elite. And it can happen. It's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you why. Next. Welcome back. Third and final segment, Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I want to let you know you should check out Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy does a phenomenal job. If you want to continue to be the most educated fan base in the entire league, make sure you check out the whole host of shows that we have from around the conference. Apparently, we just got a Locked On Mississippi State show, so you can actually listen to that one too. I don't know when it's going to be up and running, but it should be soon. But you should check that out when it drops. You should check out the whole list. Be an informed fan. Be smart. Be smarter than those other fans, right? Be like, hey, we do our research. We're not dumb. We care, right? Be that guy. Be that person. Be that fan. Anyway, thanks for making us your first listen. Thank you to the everydayers for making it happen. Make sure you find us on social media at Coach Burton 36 on X, at Coach Corey Burton on Instagram, at Locked On Vandy, everywhere you can find on social media. And make sure you like, subscribe, all of that good stuff on the Locked On Vandy podcast. So we talked about Vandy plus 13.5 in the opener. How does special teams tie into that? Well, special teams needs to be elite if that's going to happen. Okay. Can't have crappy special teams on a team like this. Okay. They need to be elite. And I think they will be. Okay. So where do I start on special teams? Well, I've talked about the return game and how that's going to happen. I think it's Micah Bell that's where my money's going to go. Micah Bell. That's my prediction. Somebody in the comments make note of that. Somebody out there make note of that. Micah Bell is going to be a returner. That's based on absolutely no rumors or nothing. That's just my prediction based on watching his high school film, because that's the only offensive stuff I could see with the ball in his hands. So he had some returns. He had some carries. He's a Swiss Army knife. So that's going to be a big difference maker there. Whoever wins the return job, I think it's going to be a nice little competition. Like I said, I think it's going to be Michael Bell. But if it's not, whoever it is, I think that's going to be a big time thing for them. I think you're going to see teams that are eventually throughout the season going to be scared to punt to whoever that is. Kickoffs are going to probably ultimately look different after the NFL is trying a new kickoff method, and I think college will be soon to follow, and then high school will be soon to follow shortly after that. So I think the return game is going to be a big factor. We've talked about it before. It has the ability, and these guys have the ability to flip the field or even take one to the house. So you had cheap points on there. Well, it's not cheap points, but you had like free points on there where your offense didn't have to drive the field. It's momentum, dude. It's like kicking game. You're like, oh, God, I didn't expect to score there. Or I didn't expect to give up that. Or, oh, man, we were going to having them pinned at the minus 15, and they just hit a big return, and now they're plus 30. They're on the plus side. Which means it went from they had to drive 85 yards to now they just have to drive 30. And maybe even drive 5 just to get points or a shot at points. So it can really – those things can really take its toll on a game, and those things can really change the momentum of a game real quick so that even a 13.5-point favorite can win a game on elite special teams play. It's happened a lot of times before and will probably happen a lot of times again in the future. So the return game is going to be I think it's going to be good for Vandy. I think it's going to give them an edge that they didn't know they had, but they're going to figure out real quick that they have. But when you look at kicking, I think that's where Vandy's gonna go. You get Ohio State punter Jesse Mirko from the transfer portal. He's got a freaking cannon. He's gonna bomb some punts. A lot of people are like, well, you shouldn't. Hopefully your punter's not working. I say this, and I heard a coach. I think it was he's at Josh Niblett, who's at Gainesville now, but he was at Hoover at the time. I think that's who this was that I heard at a clinic. He said, we tell our guys, end every series with a kick and you'll be just fine, right? And that means punts or PATs. End every series with a punt or a PAT or a field goal, right? And you're going to be in good shape. Right? Because if you have a good punter, you're going to flip the field. Okay. Field position is going to be eventually in your favor. If you have a good place kicker, you're always going to get points. And then, of course, if you're kicking a PAT, it means you just score a touchdown. So always end the series in a punt or in a kick of some sort, and you're going to be good. So I think ending in a punt is not always going to be bad because Jesse Mirko, I think, can bomb it, and I think can help keep this team in it, keep our defense in favorable positions, and so this is going to be something that I'm looking forward to seeing kind of how people really discount punters, and I've noticed. Well, football people will notice, or football people will tell you that having you don't know how important punting is until you have a bad punter. You don't know how important punting is until your guy shanks one, and you only gain 4 yards of field position because you shanked one straight to the right. Right? It's one of those things you don't notice until it's bad. But just look at some of the big time moments. Just look at some of the flip and field position. Like there was one game where Georgia was playing Tennessee. Okay. And their punter, Brett Thorson, who ended up getting drafted by not Brett Thorson. It was Jake Camarda. Brett Thorson. Yeah, we'll go with that. All right. He booms one, and it rolls and it rolls and it rolls. It total yardage was 72 yards. Ball rolls dead at the 1. unbelievable punt. Pins Tennessee back. Georgia almost gets a safety. They somehow said he got Hendon Hooker got the ball out of his hands, but Georgia ended up scoring the next time they got the ball because they were in plus side territory immediately after a punt return, and they got points, and that kind of swung momentum in their favor because it was kind of like stalemated slugfest. It swung momentum in their favor. Now that changes the game. And then, of course, if you have a great field goal kicker, that's always good. Like Jay Camarda was always automatic. Billy Bennett was always automatic. Blair Walsh was always on. Like guys are automatic. And if you have a good kicker that you can say he steps on the field, it's 3 points. And these great teams have those. Just think if you're Ohio State in the Peach Bowl, if you had a good kicker, you're probably in the national championship. You're not shanking one wide to the left that looks like he was trying to kick it down the tunnel, right? If you have a good kicker, you're probably in a national championship. Again, kicking is one of those things where you don't realize how important it is to have a really good one until you don't. And that's unfortunate for kicking. So anyway, moral of the story, special teams can win you a ball game. It can also it can help you snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and it can also help you snatch defeat from the jaws of victory at the same time. With good or bad special teams, it can help you do that. So with that being said, moral of the story, with all the overhaul, take Vandy plus 13. If you learned anything else, go to FanDuel. Take Vandy plus 13.5. I think they cover. Worst case scenario, they cover. They lose by 10. Worst case scenario, guess what? That's a cover, right? I think they win the game, but I'll save that for later. Anyway, behave yourselves. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Anchor down. Thanks for listening.